Welcome back to the channel where we remember the women who once lit up the screen, the stage, and the hearts of millions. Today, we continue with part 3 of our tribute series, turning our attention to American female celebrities whose lives were claimed by heart attacks. Some passed away suddenly, others after days of quiet suffering, but all of them were taken in a way that felt too fast, too unfair, and far too soon. Heart disease doesn't always make headlines, but it remains one of the most silent and deadly threats, especially for women, whose pain is often misunderstood or ignored. Behind the fame and the flawless images were real people with real struggles, juggling pressure, exhaustion, and stress that built up over time. These women weren't just entertainers. They were mothers, sisters, daughters, and pioneers in their fields. Today, we honor their final days, their strength, and the legacies they left behind in a world that still misses them deeply. Today, we remember Anne Rutherford, a beloved Canadian-American actress who quietly passed away on June 11, 2012, at the age of 94, after facing months of declining health caused by serious heart problems. In her final days, she had collapsed and was briefly hospitalized, but eventually returned to her Beverly Hills home, where she spent her last moments surrounded by those who loved her most. Her dear friend, actress Anne Jeffries, was by her side when she died. Anne's death marked the end of an era. She was one of the last surviving cast members of the legendary film Gone with the Wind. Best known for playing Polly Benedict, the sweet and loyal girlfriend of Mickey Rooney's Andy Hardy in 13 of the Andy Hardy films, and Corinne O'Hara, the gentle younger sister of Scarlett in Gone with the Wind, Anne was the perfect image of grace, warmth, and quiet strength. She was born in Vancouver in 1917 to a former opera singer father and an actress mother, but her childhood was far from easy. Her parents separated when she was still a baby, and her mother raised her and her sister in Los Angeles. Despite the early challenges, Anne was drawn to performance from a young age. She got her first taste of the stage at just 6 years old and quickly moved into radio and film. By 16, she was already appearing in movies, holding her own alongside stars like Gene Autry and John Wayne in B-Westerns. At 17, she signed with MGM, and that's when her career truly took off. She became one of the studio's most dependable young actresses, not just for her charm, but for her work ethic and loyalty to fans. Her role as Polly Benedict made her a household name, while her performance in Gone with the Wind cemented her place in Hollywood history. Even though she was under contract and her studio boss called her role in the film a nothing part, she cried until she was allowed to take it, because she loved the story that much. Over the years, she played many sweet, good-hearted characters in over 60 films, and even into her later life, she continued to receive floods of fan mail. She turned down the iconic role of older Rose in Titanic in 1997, but stayed active in the Gone with the Wind fan community, often appearing at anniversary events and donating personal memorabilia. Her later years were filled with memories, interviews, and admiration from a generation that still remembered her kindness and talent. Anne Rutherford's life wasn't just about fame, it was about heart. She was generous, funny, deeply loyal to her friends, and never stopped appreciating the people who supported her. She leaves behind her daughter Gloria, 2 grandsons, and a legacy that will live on in the hearts of those who grew up watching her bring warmth and joy to the screen. Her quiet death from heart failure was a sad end to a long, beautiful life spent lighting up the world with her presence. Lena Horne, one of the most powerful voices in American music and film, who passed away on May 9, 2010, at the age of 92 from congestive heart failure, a slow and painful condition that quietly wears the heart down until it simply can't keep going. In her final years, Lena had withdrawn from the public eye, her health in steady decline. And though she had once owned the stage with energy and confidence, those last days were quiet. Spent away from the spotlight she had once lit up with every performance. Born in Brooklyn in 1917, Lena grew up between cities, schools, and family members after her parents split when she was only 3. Her early life was filled with instability and movement, but even then, her beauty and talent stood out. She dropped out of high school at 16 and started singing at the Cotton Club in Harlem. launching a career that would span more than 70 years. She became a trailblazer in Hollywood, the first black woman to sign a long-term contract with a major studio, MGM, at a time when black performers were treated as invisible. But even with her undeniable talent, Lena was often reduced to roles that were cut from the final version of films shown in the South. Her parts were limited, and racism blocked her from the stardom she deserved. Despite the rejection, she never stopped pushing, on stage, in nightclubs, on albums, and as a loud voice in the civil rights movement. She marched in Washington in 1963, sued restaurants that wouldn't serve her, and refused to play roles that made black women look small. She lost her son to kidney disease, her father, her brother, and then her husband Lenny Hayden, a white bandleader she married in secret because of the backlash they faced as an interracial couple. Her life was full of personal pain, but she poured that pain into her music. Songs like Stormy Weather weren't just hits, they were emotional reflections of a woman who had weathered more than her share of storms. In 1981, at age 64, she returned to Broadway in a one-woman show, The Lady and Her Music, which became a cultural landmark and reminded everyone why she had mattered so much. Lena spent her final years in Manhattan, where she quietly watched the world change. Some of those changes she helped bring about. When she passed, thousands came to her funeral, and tributes poured in from all over, even from President Obama, who said she worked tirelessly for justice and equality. Lena Horne was more than just a beautiful voice or a glamorous face. She was a fighter, a pioneer, and a woman who kept her dignity even when the world tried to take it from her. Her death may have been quiet, but the life she lived will echo for generations. Billie Holiday, one of the most haunting voices jazz has ever known, a woman whose life was as tragic as her songs were beautiful. Born Eleanora Fagan on April 7, 1915, Billie grew up facing pain far too early, her childhood marked by poverty, instability, and abuse. But out of that suffering came a voice that could break your heart in a single note. She started singing in Harlem clubs as a teenager, and by 18 she was recording with Benny Goodman. Over the years, she became known as Lady Day, a nickname given by her dear friend Lester Young. Her phrasing, her raw emotion, her truth, she didn't just sing songs, she lived them. But her pain never really left her. Billie was a target of racism, of a system that couldn't stand the power of a black woman using her voice to tell the truth. Her performance of Strange Fruit, a protest against lynching in America, brought the wrath of the government down on her. The Federal Bureau of Narcotics, led by the racist Harry Anslinger, harassed her endlessly for her drug use. And while Billie was battling addiction, she was also fighting to survive in a world that wanted to silence her. Years of substance abuse had taken a toll on her body. By early 1959, her liver was failing. She was just 44 when she was admitted to Metropolitan Hospital in New York, emaciated, sick, and broken, but even there, she wasn't left alone. The police arrested her in her hospital bed and stationed guards outside her room. She lay dying under police watch, not as a beloved artist, but as a prisoner. On July 17, 1959, Billie Holiday died from pulmonary edema and heart failure caused by cirrhosis. She had 70 cents in her bank account. No fame, no protection, just the lonely ending of a woman who gave everything she had to her art and had almost nothing left for herself. But her legacy refused to fade. The same government that hounded her in life could not erase her in death. Over time, Billie was honored with posthumous Grammy Awards, a place in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and tributes in film and music. Her autobiography Lady Sings the Blues was turned into a major motion picture starring Diana Ross. In 2021, her life and battle with the U.S. government were brought to screen again in the United States versus Billie Holiday. Through all the chaos, Billie never stopped being a legend. She taught the world that pain has a sound, and it's called Billie Holiday. Her music still echoes through generations, because when Billie sang, she didn't just perform, she told the truth. Ginger Rogers, the legendary American actress, dancer, and singer who passed away quietly in her home on April 25, 1995, from a heart attack at the age of 83. In her final years, she had withdrawn from the spotlight, living a peaceful life between Oregon and California, still holding on to the grace and poise that had defined her for decades. Her death came suddenly but naturally, bringing an end to a life that was once the heartbeat of Hollywood's golden age. Born Virginia Catherine McMath in Independence, Missouri, Ginger's life started under difficult circumstances. Her parents separated soon after her birth, and her father kidnapped her twice before her mother won full custody. Her childhood was shaped by strong-willed women, especially her mother Leela, who worked as a newspaper reporter and later a scriptwriter. It was her mother's passion and protection that pushed Ginger into the world of performance, and from the moment she won a Charleston dance contest at 14, she was destined for stardom. Her early career in vaudeville and Broadway led her to Hollywood, where she first turned heads in Gold Diggers of 1933 and 42nd Street. But her life changed forever when she was paired with Fred Astaire in Flying Down to Rio. Their on-screen chemistry was electric. Ginger brought warmth, elegance, and a quiet strength that balanced Fred's precision. Together, they became cinema's most iconic dance duo, starring in 10 films and giving America something magical to hold onto during the dark days of the Great Depression. But Ginger was more than a dance partner. She won an Oscar for Kitty Foyle in 1940, proving she could hold her own in dramatic roles. She starred in over 70 films, made waves on television, and lit up Broadway stages well into her 50s. Behind the camera, Ginger was fiercely independent. She married 5 times but never had children, and her closest relationship remained with her mother. She was a Christian Scientist, a proud Republican, and deeply patriotic, spending World War II touring for the USO and selling war bonds. In her later years, she stayed active, even directing theater and attending tributes in her honor. Her last public appearance was just a month before her death, when she accepted the Women's International Center Living Legacy Award. Her passing marked the end of an era, but her legacy as a symbol of grace, beauty, and talent lives on. Ginger Rogers didn't just dance, she gave the world hope, class, and strength through every step, smile, and scene she ever gave. Nell Carter, the fierce, unforgettable American actress and singer who passed away far too soon on January 23, 2003, at the age of 54, after collapsing at her home in Beverly Hills from a heart attack brought on by complications from diabetes and heart disease. Her 13-year-old son Joshua found her, and the news broke hearts everywhere because Nell wasn't just a star. She was a survivor who had already fought through more pain in one lifetime than most ever will. She was born Nell Ruth Hardy in Birmingham, Alabama, one of 9 children, and from the start, life didn't go easy on her. She watched her father die when she was just a toddler, electrocuted in a horrible accident, and as a teenager, she was raped at gunpoint, becoming pregnant and giving birth to her daughter Tracy, whom she later had to send to live with her sister because she couldn't raise her alone. But Nell never gave up. She had a voice, one of those voices that could shake a room, and she used it to sing gospel on the radio and in coffee shops, slowly building a career that led her all the way to New York. She worked nightclubs and took theater classes, and then came Ain't Misbehavin', a Broadway musical that changed everything for her. Her voice, her stage presence, her fire lit up that stage and won her a Tony Award, an Emmy, and the world's attention. That led to her most famous role on the sitcom Gimme a Break, where she played Nell Harper, a tough but warm housekeeper who made people laugh, but also brought real heart to the screen. That show ran for 6 seasons and made her a household name. Behind the scenes, though, Nell was fighting battles most never saw, with addiction, depression, miscarriages, failed marriages, and deep financial struggles that led her to declare bankruptcy twice. She survived brain surgery in 1992 after suffering 2 aneurysms, got clean from cocaine, and even studied and converted to Judaism, looking for peace and purpose. She adopted 2 sons and kept performing, even when diabetes started taking a toll on her body. In 1997, she collapsed on stage while playing Miss Hannigan in Annie, but she kept going. Right before she died, she was preparing for a new stage role in the musical Raisin, still working, still pushing forward. But her body had already been through too much. The heart that had carried so much finally gave out. Nell Carter was just 4 feet 11, but she filled every room she ever walked into. She was bold, loud, loving, hurt, honest, and she made people feel seen. She made Black women feel seen. She made survivors feel seen. And even though her final years were filled with pain and quiet struggles, her legacy is still alive in every stage she stood on, every laugh she brought to people's homes, and every note she ever sang with that big, beautiful voice. Haney, the talented American character actress whose quiet, steady presence lit up dozens of shows and movies before her life ended on May 26, 2001, at the age of 67, from congestive heart failure at her home in Studio City, Los Angeles. She didn't die in the spotlight, but she left behind a lifetime of work that made people smile, laugh, and sometimes cry, and most never even knew her name. Born Anne Ryan Thomas on March 4, 1934, in Memphis, Tennessee, she lived a full life before she ever stepped foot in Hollywood. She was a wife, a mother, and a church volunteer, the kind of person who played bridge with friends and made ambrosia salad. And it wasn't until she lost her husband in 1980 and her daughter went off to college that she finally asked herself what she really wanted to do with the rest of her life. So she packed up and went to California alone, chasing something that most people would have thought was too late to go after, but it wasn't. Her first part came in the film Hopscotch that same year, and from there, she carved out a late-in-life career that most actors only dream of. Anne was never the star, but you always remembered her. She was the no-nonsense court officer in Liar Liar, the sweet but stern Mrs. Sellner in Mrs. Doubtfire, and the concerned aide in The American President. On TV, she showed up in Star Trek, The Golden Girls, Ella Law, Mama's Family, Designing Women, Boy Meets World, and so many others. She was the kind of actress who brought life to even the smallest roles and made them feel real. And all of this started in her 40s, after heartbreak, after family, after everything she thought her life was supposed to be. She used to say that her Hollywood life was just gravy, a bonus chapter, and she meant it. Even though her final years were quiet, the heart failure that took her was a reminder that time doesn't wait. But Haney filled her time with purpose. She never gave up, never complained that she was too old or too late. She just went for it. And in doing so, she gave us characters we'll never forget and a story that's quietly powerful. Not because it was loud or flashy, but because it was real. Elizabeth Taylor, one of the most iconic actresses the world has ever seen, whose life was as dazzling as it was difficult, and whose death on March 23, 2011, from congestive heart failure marked the end of an unforgettable era. She was 79 when she passed away at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, with her 4 children by her side, after a long, painful journey through decades of health battles that included multiple surgeries, near-death experiences, addiction, and chronic heart and spine problems. In her final years, she rarely appeared in public, confined to a wheelchair and quietly fighting a heart condition she had been diagnosed with back in 2004. But even in those final moments, she remained who she always was, bold, stubborn, full of spirit. So much so that she even requested her own funeral to start 15 minutes late, joking that she wanted to be late to her own goodbye. Born on February 27, 1932, in London to American parents, Elizabeth Taylor had a childhood cut short by the glare of Hollywood lights after her family moved to Los Angeles during World War II. She was acting by the age of 10 and became a superstar by 12 with National Velvet. Her stunning violet eyes and striking beauty caught the world's attention, but it was her fierce talent and screen presence that kept it. Through the 1950s and 60s, she rose to become the highest-paid actress in the world, winning 2 Academy Awards for Butterfield 8, and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and starring in classics like Giant, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, and Cleopatra. Off-screen, she lived a life full of passion and pain, marrying 8 times to 7 men, losing her 3rd husband Mike Todd in a tragic plane crash, and making headlines around the world for her love affairs, especially with Richard Burton. But as glamorous as her life looked from the outside, behind the scenes, she was often in pain, physically and emotionally. She suffered from scoliosis, broke her back as a teenager, nearly died from pneumonia in 1961, battled alcohol and prescription drug addiction, and was in and out of hospitals for much of her adult life. In the 90s, she had both hips replaced, survived another deadly pneumonia, underwent brain tumor surgery, and faced cancer and heart failure, all while still showing up, still fighting. But Elizabeth Taylor was more than just a screen legend. She was also one of the first celebrities to use her fame for a cause, fighting publicly for AIDS awareness when few others would. After her close friend Rock Hudson died of the disease, she co-founded 2 major AIDS organizations and raised millions of dollars. Her courage and compassion changed the way the world saw the disease. In the end, Elizabeth Taylor wasn't just a movie star. She was a woman who lived through love, loss, illness, fame, and scandal with unmatched resilience. She gave everything to the world: her performances, her beauty, her fire, and her heart. And even though her body eventually gave out, her legacy hasn't faded. She remains one of the greatest actresses of all time, and the world is still better because she lived in it. Vonetta McGee, a deeply talented American actress who lit up the screen during the 1970s, but whose life was tragically cut short on July 9, 2010, when she passed away from cardiac arrest at just 65 years old after being on life support for 2 days in a hospital in Berkeley, California. Her final years were marked by ongoing health struggles, including a long battle with cancer that first began in her teenage years when she was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma at just 17. Even though she kept pushing through, her body had been through decades of pain, and in the end, her heart gave out. Vonetta was not just another actress. She was a fighter, a woman who spoke out against racism in Hollywood and constantly pushed for Black women to be seen and respected on screen. Born in San Francisco on January 14, 1945, her family hoped she'd become a lawyer, and she started college studying pre-law, but the stage called her heart. She got involved with a Black theater group and soon left college behind, chasing her dreams across the ocean. Her breakout came in Italy, where she starred in The Great Silence alongside Jean-Louis Trintignant and Klaus Kinski, and it wasn't long before American directors took notice. Sidney Poitier brought her back to Hollywood to star in The Lost Man, and from there, she became one of the most memorable faces of the blaxploitation era, though she never liked that word. She preferred to call it the Black film movement and believed strongly in telling stories where Black women had power and voice. Her beauty was striking. Roger Greenspan from the New York Times once called her possibly the most beautiful woman in movies, but it was her strength that really defined her. In Blackula, Hammer, Shaft in Africa, and Thomasine and Bushrod, she played strong, fearless women who weren't just side characters. They carried the stories. She held her own next to Clint Eastwood in The Eiger Sanction and returned to the screen after health problems with a bold performance in Repo Man. But behind the scenes, Vonetta was often fighting her own private battles. After marrying actor Carl Lumley in 1986, the two shared a quiet life and had one son, Brandon, but her health problems returned in the early 2000s. Diagnosed again with cancer in 2001, she focused on her family while quietly stepping away from acting. Her husband became her caregiver, standing by her side through the most painful moments. Those who worked with her always said she never acted like a star, but she had the credits, the presence, and the grace of one. She stood tall in an industry that often overlooked women like her, and she never stopped speaking out. In her life, she didn't just act, she made space for others to dream too. And though she's no longer here, her impact is still felt. Vonetta McGee was more than a beautiful face on a movie poster. She was a woman of passion, of purpose, and of power, and the world is smaller without her in it. Mother Teresa, one of the most selfless and humble human beings the world has ever known, whose quiet strength touched the lives of millions, yet whose final years were filled with pain, illness, and spiritual loneliness. Born on Jezigongspojagsu on August 26, 1910, in what is now North Macedonia, she felt the pull toward God early, leaving her family behind at just 18 to join the Sisters of Loreto in Ireland. Eventually, she found herself in the crowded streets of Calcutta, where she would spend nearly her entire life serving the poor, the dying, and the forgotten. After years of teaching in a convent school, she felt what she called a call within a call in 1946, a deep urge to walk away from the safety of her life and serve those no one else would touch. Wearing a simple blue and white sari, she stepped into the streets with no money, no plan, just a heart full of faith, and began nursing the sick, giving dignity to the dying, and feeding the hungry. Over time, her small efforts grew into the Missionaries of Charity, a worldwide movement of over 4,500 nuns caring for people in the most heartbreaking conditions across more than 130 countries. But behind her saintly smile was a woman who privately battled deep spiritual pain, often feeling abandoned by the very God she had dedicated her life to. Her letters, released years after her death, revealed decades of inner torment, of praying and feeling no answer, of speaking to God and hearing nothing back. Yet she never stopped. Despite her growing health problems, including heart issues and breathing trouble, she continued working well into her 80s. By the mid-1990s, her body had begun to fail, heart attacks, malaria, pneumonia, kidney complications, yet she still led her order and traveled when she could. In her final days, she was weak, frail, and often bedridden. She died on September 5, 1997, at the age of 87, after suffering cardiac arrest, surrounded by those she had loved and served for so long. Her death felt like the quiet fading of a light that had burned so brightly for so many. But even in death, her legacy lived on. She had won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979 and had become a global symbol of compassion. Years later, after 2 miracles were recognized by the Vatican, she was declared a saint in 2016. Still, what made her remarkable wasn't titles or awards. It was the way she chose to stand beside those no one else saw, to hold the hand of the dying, to lift the broken, and to keep going even when she felt lost herself. Mother Teresa didn't chase fame. She walked into suffering and stayed there, quietly day after day. And in doing so, she became unforgettable. Carole Fredericks, the powerful and soulful American singer whose voice captured hearts across France but whose life ended too soon, just 2 days after her 49th birthday. On June 7, 2001, while on a fundraising trip in Dakar, Senegal, Carole suffered a sudden heart attack that took her life in a matter of minutes. She had been full of energy, working to raise money for causes close to her heart, like children's hospitals. But her own heart gave out without warning, leaving her family, friends, and fans in deep shock and grief. Carole was buried in Montmartre Cemetery in Paris, a city that had become her home and where she had built a life filled with music, love, and purpose. Born in Springfield, Massachusetts, Carole grew up surrounded by music. Her mother sang gospel and jazz. Her father played piano and wrote arrangements, and her older brother was none other than Taj Mahal, the legendary blues musician. But Carole was determined to create her own path. After high school, she moved to California, singing backup for her brother and others, while also working regular jobs just to stay afloat. Tired of struggling, she took a huge leap of faith. She bought a one-way ticket to Paris without knowing a word of French. Everyone thought she was crazy, but within weeks she was singing backup for some of the biggest stars in the country, like Celine Dion, Johnny Hallyday, and Vanessa Paradis. Her big break came when Jean-Jacques Goldman invited her to form the trio Fredericks Goldman Jones. Their first album sold over 1 million copies, and just like that, Carole became a superstar in France. Her voice was full of soul, heart, and emotion, and it didn't matter that French wasn't her first language. People connected with the feeling she poured into every note. Beyond her music, Carole gave her time and heart to charity work, helping children and supporting causes that mattered. In the 1990s, she released solo albums that blended soul, R&B, jazz, and gospel, showing just how much she could do. But despite all her success, she stayed humble, warm, and generous. Her home in Paris was filled with memories, gold records, hats she loved collecting, and pictures of friends and family smiling beside her. When she died, the French government honored her, and her sister Connie later founded a program to teach French language through music in her memory. Carole's death was sudden and cruel, no warning, no second chance, but her life was full and her legacy lives on. She wasn't just a singer. She was a light, a bridge between cultures, and a reminder of what can happen when you take a leap and follow your own voice. Romina Yan, the beloved Argentine actress, screenwriter, and singer whose sudden and heartbreaking death at just 36 years old left a deep emptiness in the hearts of millions who grew up watching her. On September 28, 2010, Romina collapsed from a massive heart attack and was rushed to the Central Hospital of San Isidro with no vital signs. Despite trying for nearly an hour to revive her, doctors couldn't bring her back. She died on the same day, far too young, leaving behind her husband, 3 children, her devastated parents, well-known television producers Gustavo Yankelevich and Chris Morena, and countless fans who had adored her since childhood. She had felt unwell earlier that day, and a friend took her to the hospital. But it was already too late. Many struggled to believe the news at first, hoping it was a mistake, but it was sadly confirmed. The grief was so overwhelming that fans gathered at the Obelisco in Buenos Aires with flowers and candles, then marched to the Teatro Gran Rex, where she had once brought her character Belen to life on stage. Romina was more than an actress. She was a part of people's childhoods, a symbol of kindness and love in the role that made her famous. Belen Fraga in Chiquititas, the head of a home for orphans, a role created by her own mother that touched children across Latin America and beyond. She began her journey on television at just 16 as a dancer on Jugué Conmigo, and quickly moved into acting, starring in Mi Cuñado, Querine, and many other shows. But it was Chiquititas and her character's warmth, joy, and motherly spirit that made her a household name. Her portrayal of Belen wasn't just acting, it felt real, like an extension of who she was. Even after leaving the show, she continued working in television and film, including a Chiquititas movie and hosting Disney Channel's Playhouse Disney in Argentina. In real life, she was just as loving, married to Dario Giordano, and raising 3 children while balancing her career. Romina came from a family of artists, and her passion was in her blood. But she also chose to step away from fame at times to focus on being a mother. In her final years, she was preparing to return to television again, but life was cut short before that could happen. After her death, painful rumors spread linking her to pressure over body image from the industry, particularly about her mother's casting decisions, something Chris Morena publicly addressed with tears and sorrow, defending her daughter and grieving the unfairness of how people tried to place blame. But Romina's death was not due to those rumors. It was a sudden, tragic heart failure that no one could have predicted. Her death was not traumatic in the physical sense, but emotionally, it shook a nation. She was the light in so many people's childhood memories, the gentle voice in a troubled world, and the kind of star that doesn't just shine but stays in people's hearts forever. Romina Yan's story is one of joy, talent, and love, but also of deep pain, of a bright life lost too soon, of a mother grieving her daughter, and of a country that still mourns a woman who once made them believe in kindness.